English translation 275th contact. Tuesday, 10th of August, 1999, 22:27 hours.
Actually, I did not want to talk about tomorrow, the 11th of August, 1999, but a question was put to me about that day. You know that many false prophets who deal with astrology and Nostradamus predicted a lot of disaster tomorrow. Even the beginning of the Third World War and the end of the world, which is of course all nonsense. The starting point for all these gloomy false assertions and prophecies is Michel Nostradamus, alias Michel Nostradamus, and his prophecies respectively, whereby in particular Centuria X1072 is used, which explains the following. As I read here, l'an 1999 7 mois, du ciel viendra en grand roi des frayeurs, ressusciter le grand roi d'Angolmois, avant et après Mars régner par bonheur. Translated into German, it means something like, in the year 1999, a great king of horrors comes from heaven. The great king of Angolmois, resurrected before and after Mars, reigns in happiness. Another translation. In 1999, the 7th month, a great king of horrors will appear in the sky. He will awaken the great king of Angolmois from the dead. Before and after, Mars will rule at a good time. As you hear, some things emerge from these two translations that do not exactly coincide, and the more you read such translations of the Nostradamus verses, the more you encounter inconsistencies. Also, with regard to the explanations or interpretations of the prophetic verses, a great salad confusion prevails, because events are attributed to Nostradamus verses, which in reality have completely different meanings and took place at different times than the decipherers and unravelers of the Nostradamus prophecies claim. So far, in truth, only a few prophetic verses written by Michel Nostradamus have really been deciphered, such as the part of Centuria X72 that refers to the eclipse of the sun of the 11th of August, 1999. But all the nonsense of the false prophets, who refer to their astrological abilities and to the Centurion X72 of Nostradamus, has absolutely nothing to do with his prophecies. Also that tomorrow's eclipse of the sun is supposed to cause some disaster in the short or long term, or that a spiritual change of the world results from it, or even the Third World War or the end of the world. This corresponds not only to a nonsensical assertion, but also to an effective nonsense, and that no matter by which false prophets the idiotic statements and assertions are made. Solar eclipses, both partial and total, have existed for millions of years, for as long as Earth, Moon, and Sun have existed. And never did a solar eclipse have any influence on earthly world events or on the changes of consciousness of humans. The only influences that appeared were those of faith and delusion, although these were not triggered by the eclipse itself, but solely by the fear and delusion of the humans themselves, who always saw something dangerous, terrifying, disastrous, and frightening behind an eclipse event. And although Nostradamus was somewhat more knowledgeable and enlightened than his contemporaries, he also saw in an eclipse of the sun all those horrors which the other mad believers of his time also saw, and as there are many such still today. First of all, the false prophets and prophetesses of astrological and Nostradamic as well as similar nature. I just wanted to have said that. But now to the question that I actually wanted to address to you. How did Michel Notre-Dame or Nostradamus actually come to his prophetic verses? Was he clairvoyant or did he have inspirations? Was everything based on astrological calculations or did he have visions? For my part, I cannot answer this question exactly, which is why I need your help. I am also interested myself, which is why I think that you can certainly help me by answering the questions correctly. Since my interest has also been aroused, it is not exclusively a question from other people. What do you mean?
First of all, I would like to agree with all what you have explained concerning Nostradamus and the false prophets, and I think that this was good. Because surely you will write down and publish our present conversation as a contact report, whereby also all interested persons in this relationship receive the correct information. Secondly, I think that it is correct that I can answer your questions, as the interest in this is mainly with you. So it has to be explained that Nostradamus compiled his prophetic verses with different methods, namely by performing astrological and astronomical calculations, but also by having visions and clairvoyant abilities. But he mixed all this with so-called means of expanding consciousness because he was addicted to drugs and opium. However, this did not prevent him from grasping real prophetic moments and dressing them in verses. More cannot actually be explained because you yourself have brought up the further necessary issues.
Well, then I thank you. Then I would like to address the beamship sighting on the 1st of August 1999, to which you already told me yesterday with your thoughts that the ship was flown by Tauron. Christina has written a useful description about the sighting, which I will read to you immediately if I have asked a question about it. In May last year, a photo was taken by passive members above Schmidrudi, on which one of your beamships was to be recognized, as I also reported in Bulletin number 23 of July 1999. Then another photo was taken by Edith. She photographed Florina's beamship in Luino, Italy on the 22nd of April 1998, as I also reported in Bulletin number 17 of July 1998. The photo of the passive members did not come from you deliberately, but the photo of Edith was. On the 28th of May 1999 again, so it says here in Bulletin number 23 of July 1999, Tauron let himself be seen at night in little more than a height of 4,000 meters in full lighting over the center, about which Patrick Chenot wrote a report, which several witnesses confirmed. Now my question. Years ago I had been told that you would not present yourselves anymore, neither as persons nor with your flying apparatuses. But now what happened during the last 2 years contradicts that. Above all, however, it contradicts what Tauron has already done twice, namely that he has been circling around the sky openly and visibly. How does that reconcile with what you told me earlier? But before you answer me, I would like to read Christina's report to you. See report on page 86.
The thing is, Florina showed herself to Edith with all our consent, and then we noticed that quite pleasant things were happening in Edith as well as in various other group members about this. That is why we gave in to Tauron's request when he asked if he could openly and visibly move over the center, which he did on the night of the 28th of May of this year. And again we noticed that it was good, and that visibly fruitful changes were taking place in different group members. So I approached the High Council and presented them with the statements they had made, whereupon they were advised to lift our privacy shield at certain moments, if this appeared to be justifiable. The condition, however, is that only one sight wedge remains open at a time, pointing to the observer or observers or to a camera. If one or perhaps several of our flying apparatuses can be observed from the center, then this is only possible from this location, as a result of which it can no longer be sighted in the wider surroundings. This is also true, of course, when group members are out and away from the center and we let them see our flying apparatuses.
Glad to hear that. Then there might be such observation opportunities here and there in the future?
It will be possible from case to case, yes. But that does not mean that we feel obliged in this respect. It should always be a peculiarity.
Of course. Thank you very much for that. But one more question in this respect. What has arisen with regard to the photo of Barbara and Andreas, who took a photo on the 14th of July 1999, southeast of Colmar in Alsace in the direction of Ensisheim-Ungersheim, on which, in my opinion, as you can see here from these computer pictures taken by Piero, a beamship is to be seen. Was there someone of you there, and had themselves photographed?
I answered your question yesterday and clarified the case. No, It was not any of us in that airspace at that time. But we registered that those strangers were in that airspace that we were also observing at the time when the passive members above Schmidruti were able to photograph our aircraft.
Too bad. We thought it was one of your ships.
That was really not the case. But like you, I would also like to say that the structure here on the computer images is indeed a flying apparatus, and that it belongs to the foreigners.
And have you been able to clarify, with regard to the 23rd of May 1977, who was present at the center?
I could also do this, yes, but only because Manara was still able to remember it. Engelbert and Maria were not present, because they were both at their jobs and worked this Monday. But Jacobus and Herbert Runkel, as well as Hans Schutzbach, who was unemployed at that time and also wrote an experience report about the event, were admitted.
Can I ask some more questions?
Certainly.
Good, thank you. Was there a pre-civilization in Egypt? I mean, was there already a tribe in pre-Egyptian times who lived there?
This is indeed the case. In our annals, the tribe was led by the Nefrenen. They populated the land at the Nile Delta about 17,000 years BC and lived there until the 10th millennium BC, thus about 7 millennia BC before they died out, whereby, however, a few thousand people scattered to all winds. Before this civilization, however, some other peoples lived there, whose existence goes back to about 100,000 years BC.
Thank you. Then I would like to talk about something that is old beer, and we have talked about a lot. I think, however, that it will still be necessary to deal with these issues again. The thing is, recently I had a video played to me in which various persons from the American and South American regions as well as from other parts of the world claim that they are in contact with Plejaren groups, or individuals, or even spiritual beings. But you have repeatedly assured me that such assertions do not correspond to the truth. Now another time the question. Do any other groups other than yours or any other persons other than yours have or have had contacts to Earth humans? Do any other Plejatic Plejarenian commands exist or still exist on Earth, other than your command? Several people from America and South America contacted Wendell Stevens, some of them years ago, who claimed that they had had or still have contact with Plejaren from the Alkyone system, whereby the different Plejaren contact groups had no knowledge of each other, and therefore did not know that other groups were in contact with terrestrial humans.
Overall, this corresponds only to lies, fantasies, dizziness, and fraud, because all Pleiadian Plejaren groups, and thus also all individuals, have always been and still are today under my command, because I am the Jeshwish responsible for this solar system, but also the one responsible for the entire Pleiadian Plejaren systems. So consequently, nothing can be done with regard to contacts with terrestrial humans without me having knowledge of it and issuing an order for it. We have already explained to you several times that, of us Plejadians, Plejaren, only my command is authoritative for the Earth, and that apart from the members of my command, no other Pleiadian Plejaren forces have contact with any human beings of the Earth, neither physical nor telepathic. Some earlier contacts with terrestrial humans are therefore in no wise identical with any claims of alleged contacts of terrestrial persons with any Pleiadian Plejaren groups, individuals or so-called spirit beings, which belong to a delusion and misbelief in this respect anyway, and are a product of fantasy. The few Earth humans who we stood physically or telepathically in contact with were known to you through our explanations, and these stand in no connection whatsoever with those alleged claims of contact with our personnel which were made, and are still occurring, by the many selfish and lying, as well as swindling Earth humans. And as you know, Those earthly persons with whom we had physical or telepathic contacts, and who were known to you, sometimes even personally, have not been alive for quite some time. So it can be said that you are actually the only person on the earth who stands in physical and telepathic contact with and from the Pleiadian Pleiaren. But anyone who claims otherwise, precisely in the sense that he or she is in any kind of contact with us or with other groups or individuals, etc., of the Pleiadian Pleiaren, is at the least guilty of lying.
Thank you. Then this matter would also be discussed. Then something else. Perhaps you know that so-called Mother Teresa is soon to be canonized in a high-speed process. But you yourself said to me, in regard to this woman, that she is a criminal who, under the cover of faith and religion, commits, respectively committed, because in the meantime she has died, grave wrongdoings. As I know from you and from various terrestrial sources, she was a child robber who stole children from many Indian mothers and sold them for a lot of money to childless foreigners. In cooperation with other sisters of her order, she told the mothers from whom she stole the children that the children entrusted to her had died, and so forth. Furthermore, she also raked in dollars by the millions by means of donations which were entrusted to her for the purpose of alleviating the need of those who were suffering, and to build hospitals and nursing homes, and so forth. But all the many dollars, which, not very long ago, you indicated to me was 3.5,3500,000, and in large part, Mother Teresa got through begging and underhanded means from the federal heads and finance bosses and so forth, was never utilized for the purposes indicated by her. Only a few dollars actually flowed out for the named purposes, while most of the remainder, namely more than 1.7 billion 1,700,000, if I correctly recall your statements, were carried to Rome by the deceiver in order to fill the papal coffers. Can one let that hang in the air and also openly make this public, or had I better remain silent over it?
What I told you in connection with this fraudulent little woman corresponds to the events and facts, so the explanations may also be mentioned openly.
The humans of Earth practice so-called extreme sports. What do you think?
Nothing. Humans who practice extreme sports are ill and addicted. Extreme sport cannot be described as sport either, because the practice of this activity is the result of a complete lack of responsibility towards oneself, one's fellow human beings, and life. In addition, the so-called extreme sportsmanship must be described as complete nonsense in the sense that the persons who engage in this activity do not recognize any consequences of their actions and are therefore unable to grasp them or keep track of them. These humans lack any assessment of the possible consequences and dangers, which is why fatal or disabling accidents occur again and again.
And to which special so-called extreme sports do you refer this?
There is no exclusion of any kind. What I have explained also applies to various so-called normal sports.
An example.
I am thinking, for example, of the various roller skates and skateboards, etc.
I know what you mean. I actually asked all the questions and got the answers.
Good. Then it is time for me to leave, too. There are still some tasks waiting for me. But before I leave, my daughter Simyase sends greetings to you as well as to all group members. This should also apply from my side. Goodbye, dear friend Edward. Until the next time.
Also, I shall pay you my best regards from everyone, and please, greet also Simyase and all others from me. Sachlomi.